The United States can keep repeating that these waters belong to everyone, but power in the Arctic is no longer decided by legal memos or diplomatic footnotes. It is decided by who shows up, who patrols, who builds, who can actually operate when the ice closes in. That reality was made unmistakably clear when Prime Minister Mark Carney announced billions of dollars for new Arctic icebreakers and northern infrastructure. There was no attempt to soften the message, no attempt to reassure Washington. Canada was no longer asking to be acknowledged, it was asserting control. For decades, American ships passed through Canada's Arctic without hesitation. U.S. submarines surfaced beneath the polar ice and called it international space. Icebreakers flew foreign flags through Canadian channels while Ottawa issued protests that no one felt compelled to answer. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. Canada claimed sovereignty on maps, but it lacked the physical capacity to enforce it. Without ports, without year-round vessels, without persistent surveillance, the Arctic remained open to whoever was strong enough to use it. That imbalance shaped Arctic behavior for nearly 70 years. The United States treated the Northwest Passage as a convenient shortcut. Russia built bases and fleets on its northern coastline. China labeled itself a near-Arctic power and quietly increased its presence. Canada watched all of it unfold with limited tools to respond. Sovereignty existed in principle, not in practice. Then the political equation changed. When Donald Trump escalated economic pressure on Canada through tariffs and open threats, Ottawa's strategic assumptions collapsed. Canada could no longer rely on American goodwill as the foundation of its trade or security planning. The idea that Canada could afford to remain passive in the Arctic vanished almost overnight. Mark Carney understood what this moment represented. Not a crisis to manage, but an opening to finally act. The Arctic was no longer a frozen barrier. It was becoming a corridor. The Northwest Passage is not a single channel. It is a network of waterways cutting through Canada's Arctic archipelago, linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. For centuries, ice rendered it useless. Explorers failed. Ships were crushed. The passage existed more as legend than logistics. Climate change altered that equation. Ice coverage shrank. Navigation windows expanded. What was once blocked most of the year became accessible for longer and longer periods. By the 2030s, experts expect portions of the passage to be navigable every summer. With icebreaker support, some routes could operate nearly year-round within decades. That shift rewrites global shipping math. A vessel traveling between Asia and Eastern North America can save thousands of kilometers by bypassing southern routes. Fewer days at sea, lower fuel consumption, faster delivery schedules. Even small percentages of global shipping represent staggering value. Trillions of dollars move across oceans each year. Capturing even a fraction transforms regional economies. But shipping alone is only part of the story. Beneath Canada's Arctic lies an immense concentration of strategic resources. Nickel, copper, rare earth elements, lithium, zinc, gold. Materials essential for electric vehicles, military systems, renewable energy, and advanced manufacturing. For decades, those deposits remained largely inaccessible. No roads, no ports, no cost-effective way to move bulk materials south. Extraction only made sense for the highest value commodities. The Northwest Passage changes everything. Ports allow heavy equipment to arrive, icebreakers extend shipping seasons, infrastructure reduces costs. Suddenly, resources once locked in ice become commercially viable. Control of the passage becomes control of access. That is the real economic prize. Not just transit fees, but decades of trade, extraction, and strategic leverage measured in the hundreds of billions. Canada has argued since the mid-20th century that these waters are internal. The legal position is straightforward. The passage cuts through Canadian territory. Ships should require permission just as they do in any domestic waterway. The United States rejected that interpretation from the beginning. Washington insisted the route qualifies as an international strait, guaranteeing transit rights under maritime law. This disagreement was not theoretical. In 1969, an American tanker crossed the passage without Canadian authorization. In 1985, a U.S. icebreaker did the same. Each time, Canada protested. Each time, nothing changed. The message was clear. Without the ability to enforce rules, rules did not matter. An agreement signed in the late 1980s papered over the dispute without resolving it. The United States agreed to notify Canada before transits. Canada preserved its legal position. Neither side conceded. The imbalance persisted. What changed was capability. For years, Canada's Arctic presence was limited. Seasonal patrols, sparse ranger units, Coast Guard ships restricted by ice conditions, no deep water ports capable of servicing modern fleets, no permanent military infrastructure, no continuous surveillance. Claiming authority without the means to exercise it left Canada exposed. Trump's economic pressure altered national priorities. Diversifying trade routes became urgent. Securing northern access became essential. Carney's government moved quickly. Funding was directed not toward studies or symbolic announcements, but toward construction. Ports were expanded. Northern airports upgraded. All-weather roads planned. Surveillance systems modernized. Coast Guard operations extended. The centerpiece was a commitment to new heavy icebreakers capable of operating year-round in extreme conditions. These were not token vessels. They were designed to establish continuous presence regardless of weather or season. Timelines were accelerated. Infrastructure projects launched immediately. Export facilities tied directly to Arctic shipping corridors. This was not a distant vision. It was an active build-out. And here is the strategic reality Washington underestimated. Physical presence creates facts on the water. When Canada can escort ships, require pilots, enforce environmental standards, provide refueling and repairs, and monitor traffic continuously, the debate shifts. Legal arguments remain, but practical control takes precedence. Ships comply with the authority that enables them to operate safely. Ports shape behavior. Services shape compliance. The United States can continue asserting freedom of navigation, but once Canada manages the passage operationally, those assertions lose leverage. Control does not require confrontation. It requires infrastructure. This creates a dilemma Washington did not fully anticipate. If the passage is truly international, that logic applies to everyone, not only American vessels, Chinese vessels, Russian vessels, any power seeking access to Arctic routes near North America. That outcome undermines continental security. Arctic access is central to early warning systems, defense planning, and regional stability. Allowing unrestricted transit by potential adversaries erodes the very security framework the United States helped build. Some American analysts have begun acknowledging this contradiction. Supporting Canadian control may better serve North American security than opposing it. But reversing decades of policy requires admitting strategic error. That recalibration has not happened. Meanwhile, other powers are watching closely. Russia has invested heavily in its northern routes. China continues expanding its Arctic research and shipping ambitions. Any ambiguity benefits them. Every month, Canada delays asserting control increases outside influence. Canada has responded cautiously but decisively, strengthening partnerships with Arctic-capable allies, conducting joint exercises, integrating surveillance, making clear that sovereignty applies universally, allies included. The irony is sharp. Pressure intended to constrain Canada accelerated its independence. A trade dispute triggered the largest Arctic investment in Canadian history. Infrastructure replaced vulnerability. Presence replaced symbolism. By the mid-2035s, Canada will operate deep-water ports, year-round icebreaker patrols, modern surveillance, and permanent northern facilities. The Northwest Passage will function under Canadian management regardless of unresolved legal debates. Shipping will adapt. Markets will respond. Authority will be normalized through use. The United States will still speak of international waters, but the practical reality will be unmistakable. Control belongs to the country that built it. The Arctic is opening. Routes are shifting. Power is being redistributed quietly, without confrontation, without declarations of victory. Canada did not challenge Washington directly. It simply acted. And in geopolitics, action reshapes reality far more effectively than argument. Trump expected compliance. What he triggered instead was transformation. Canada is no longer asking to be acknowledged in the Arctic. It is building the conditions that make acknowledgement unavoidable.